Okay, everyone, today we're going to talk about Karen Horney. And her theory is called psychoanalytic social theory. There are still followers of Horney today, and we'll talk a little bit about how her theory certainly differs from Freud's theory. In this case, in Horney's case, she argued that social and cultural conditions are very much responsible for shaping your personality, your relationships with others, your relationship with your parents. So this is not about this as much this internal conflict with your id, your ego, and your superego. It's about your relationships with others. However, you need to get your needs met in childhood, and if your needs are not met, you might develop what she called basic hostility or basic anxiety. And when you develop this hostility or anxiety, you need to compensate for it. You need to be able to combat it. So one of the ways you can do it is to move toward people. One of the ways you do it is move against people. And another way is to move away from people. And then realize these are things that we all do. But what Karen Horney emphasized is that people who would be categorized as neurotics would be overusing these particular strategies. And we'll talk about what that's all about. So let's start with what is basic hostility and basic anxiety. Basic hostility is if basic hostility arises if your parents do not satisfy your needs for safety and your needs for satisfaction. And basic anxiety is a repressed hostility leading you to feel insecure and fearful, apprehensive. Okay? And again, this all comes about when you do not get your needs satisfied as a child. So obviously how you were raised, how you're cared for as a child is very important to Karen Horney's theory. Okay? And we're all trying to protect ourselves from basic anxiety. People who are neurotics, they repeat the same unproductive strategy over and over again, and it leads to what she called the vicious circle. You might have heard this term before, the vicious cycle, where you do it again, it gets you into more trouble, which leads you to do it again, which leads to get into more trouble, and so on. You keep banging your head against the door, and you're not getting productive, and things are just getting worse. So that's the vicious cycle. So when things get worse, it increases your anxiety. You try the same maladaptive strategy to reduce your anxiety, and it just keeps going over and over again. Okay? You have these, also, according to Horney, you have these neurotic needs, 10 categories of neurotic needs. And these are attempts to reduce your basic anxiety, and you serve these neurotic needs. People who have neurotics, they serve these neurotic needs. So different neurotics serve different needs, and I'll explain what those needs are. So, for example, one neurotic need is a need for affection and approval. People, now, do we all have a need for affection and approval? Absolutely. So all of these neurotic needs, as described by Karen Horney, are needs that we all have. However, neurotics take it to an extreme level. So while we all have a need for affection and approval, it becomes neurotic when we just want to please everybody and we want approval from everybody. Good luck on getting that. So if you're neurotic and you find that you don't get approval from everybody, now it makes you feel worse. Now that increases your anxiety, and you keep on trying again and again and again. And obviously, that's not going to work. You're not going to please everybody. Another neurotic need is a need for a powerful partner. So people who have a neurotic need for a powerful partner, really, they seek someone who is really dominant over them. They don't, personally, they don't have it. They have low self-confidence. They overvalue love, and they're kind of overly dependent on this powerful, strong partner who's going to protect them. Okay. Another neurotic need is a neurotic need to restrict your life within narrow borders. You want to keep everything really, really simple, downgrading your own abilities. You don't want to make an impact. You just want to kind of live your own little life and not bother anybody else and just stay hidden. And obviously that is limiting yourself in many ways. So it becomes a neurotic need if you always are retreating to that little corner. A neurotic need for power is a need to control others, and this again becomes a neurotic need when it is just constant all the time. You are trying to dominate and control others because you don't want to appear weak. Remember, this is all a defense against your basic anxiety, right? So you're doing it by domination over others. Neurotic need number 5, to exploit others, to take advantage of others. And particularly, this has to do with you are being afraid you're going to be taken advantage of yourself, so you better do that first. I'm sure you know people like that. Again, the idea is you want to, you are so afraid of being taken advantage of others, so you got to kind of take advantage of them first. But it's a neurotic need, and you're doing this over and over again and getting yourself into trouble. The 6th neurotic need is a need for social recognition or prestige. You always want to be important, always want to be recognized, and very upset if you're not recognized for all of your amazing achievements. Number 7 neurotic need is a need for personal admiration. You have an inflated self-esteem, and it has to be fed. You want to be admired. You want to be respected. Boy, oh boy, if you're not getting that, you don't want to hit that self-esteem. So you pump up that self-esteem more than it's really worth. Neurotic need for ambition and personal achievement. You want to be the best. You want to. So this is like so think about, remember we talked about the need for achievement, right? Imagine a neurotic need for achievement. Imagine when your need for achievement just becomes just so overwhelming and just over and over again neurotic. That's where it becomes a neurotic need. 9th neurotic need is a need for self-sufficiency and independence. You want to move away from others. You want to be a survivor. You want to be take care of yourself. You don't want to have to depend on anybody else. Now, self-sufficiency and independence are great values, especially values that we have in our country here. But it becomes a neurotic need when you are really taking this overboard and you are withdrawing from others and trying to just be all by yourself, and you don't want help from anybody, and then it becomes a problem. Finally, neurotic need for perfection and unassailability. So these are real, true perfectionists. They can't make any mistakes. They can't have any personal flaws, and they just are always focused on maintaining that sense of perfection. Again, these are all needs that we have from time to time, but it becomes neurotic needs when over and over again we are focusing on that particular neurotic need. Now, these neurotic needs also can kind of fit into 3 basic categories called neurotic trends. And these neurotic trends has to do with the general approach toward dealing with your defense against basic anxiety. One way is to move toward people, one way is to move against people, and another way is to move away from people. We do this all the time, moving toward people. When we are sad, we do seek social support. We seek to be with others. When we're lonely, we seek to be with others, to join with others. Perfectly normal. Moving against people. If someone is attacking you, then you have to kind of fight back sometimes. You have to be able to move against. You can't be, there are times where someone will be trying to take advantage of you, and you have to fight back from that. And in that case, you are moving against someone. Perfectly normal to do when needed, but not all the time. Moving away from people, sometimes you just want to be alone. Sometimes you want to be away from others. Perfectly normal to do that on occasion, but to constantly just try to withdraw away from people, to kind of, live in a shack in the middle of the forest, then I think it may be a neurotic need that is being satisfied here. So let's talk about moving toward people. If you think about a neurotic person, this is the compliant personality. Your neurotic needs, you want the affection and approval, you want the powerful partner, and you want to have those narrow limits. You want to, you have feelings of helplessness, so by latching on to others, essentially, becoming dependent on them, then you can feel less helpless. She would call it a morbid dependency. So people who have neurotic, who have these neurotic needs, moving toward people, that's the way they defend against basic anxiety. The aggressive personality, moving against people. So the people who follow the neurotic needs of power, exploitation, recognition, admiration, and achievement, they are fighting all those hostile forces against them. They are being successful. They are strong. And they're aggressive. So obviously there are times to be aggressive, times to be powerful, but to be constantly fighting others, trying to dominate others, that's a neurotic trend. And this reflects the aggressive personality. Finally, the neurotic trend of moving away from people, withdrawing from people. This represents the detached personality. You are staying away. The self-sufficiency is a good example of that. You stay away from others. You go and hide in your own shack somewhere. Perfection. You got your own little world that you want to keep perfect and everything like that. Don't mess up my little perfect world here. You want to keep, take care of that yourself. Be away from others here in that respect. That reflects moving away from people. And this protects you against feelings of isolation. Okay, you don't worry about isolation. You could be by yourself, no problem. And again, it's a neurotic trend because again, you're just not willing to approach other people and admit, some even small bit of dependency. Problem with how we struggle with basic anxiety has to do with we are trying to compete against an idealized self-image that we might create for ourselves. So the neurotics, they are doing this. We create basically we have a natural tendency towards self-realization, for conquering our anxiety and hostility, for becoming, a healthy person, interacting well with others, forming loving relationships, and so on. But when you have this idealized self-image, this is like you're creating a godlike picture of yourself. So you believe about yourself the way you believe you should be. Okay? Well, guess what? An idealized self-image, it's idealized. It is kind of unrealistic. It is, setting it way, way, way too high a bar for yourself. Okay? It's again, look, the idealized self-image is one of perfection. And there's always going to be a gap between your real self and your idealized self. The bigger that gap is, the more you hate yourself, the more you have self-hatred. So if you take a look at the three neurotic trends, about the compliant, aggressive, and detached personalities, the compliant neurotics, their idealized self is to see themselves as good and saintly. Okay? The aggressive neurotics, to be the strongest ones, to be the most heroic. That's the way they see their idealized self. Strong and heroic. The detached neurotics, their idealized self-image is of wise and self-sufficient. They can take care of themselves, and they don't need anybody else. And they see that as wisdom, and that is their idealized self. Okay? So your quest for the idealized self, for serving this idealized self, essentially, to propping it up, essentially, involves three aspects of the neurotic search for glory, neurotic claims, and neurotic pride. And let's talk about these three things. The neurotic search for glory, a drive to actualize your ideal self. There's three elements to this. First is a need for perfection. If you think about that, that fits right into one of those neurotic needs, right? You're molding your whole personality into this idealized self. What do we mean by the tyranny of the should? You're always concerned about what you should be doing. I should be doing this, I should be doing that, should be doing this, should be doing that. And it is overwhelming you. Neurotic ambition is that compulsive drive towards superiority. Again, you want to be better and better and better. You want to be the best. You want to be the best. And again, it becomes neurotic. It's just always focused on that. And again, it is searching for that idealized self-image. Remember that. A drive toward a vindictive triumph. It's a drive to put others down. Anytime you can put someone else down, it makes you feel a little higher yourself. So when you do that, that pushes you a little bit closer to your idealized self-image. Feel a little bit higher. Okay? And these are three ways in which you can try to move yourself towards that idealized self-image. Obviously, not too good. Neurotic claims. Again, if you have an idealized self-image, if you paint yourself as godlike, well, godlike people have godlike needs. So you believe that you are entitled to special privileges, not like all those other losers out there. You have special privileges. So when you don't get those privileges, you complain and you feel that you are not being treated like you should be treated. So you, by making those neurotic claims and fighting for them, that makes you feel better. That again builds up that idealized self-image. Finally, your neurotic pride is having this false pride in yourself based on your idealized self. So you see yourself as strong and heroic, again, if you're that aggressive personality. So your neurotic pride is your false pride in this, how strong and heroic you are. You realize you're not heroic at all, but you're going to take some false pride in it. You make your little achievement and you're going to blow it up and enhance it and make it seem like, you see how great I am, that kind of thing. But again, realize that because these people are neurotic, there's going to be this gap between their real self and their idealized self-image. Bigger the gap, the more the self-hatred. Okay? But realize that the idealized view of the self, you can never satisfy. You can never reach that ideal, so you're always going to be unsatisfied. You're always going to fail to measure up. So there's always going to be some level of self-hatred then. Your demands on yourself are relentless. You have that tyranny of the should. Maybe you did something good, but you should have been doing it better. That kind of thing. Merciless self-accusation. Boy, oh boy, when you do something that doesn't fit your idealized self-image, my goodness, you're going to be accusing yourself of being a terrible person. Self-contempt. You just have disgust for yourself. Contempt. Especially when you are not doing what you do. If you are, for example, if you have that neurotic need for achievement and you fail a test, oh my God, are you going to see yourself as a worthless, useless person? And that's a neurotic. You're serving that neurotic need. It is again, it's based on that idealized view of yourself. That self-hatred that comes from it. Remember, the neurotic need for ambition to build up the idealized view of yourself. So failing a test, you got to watch out for that, because that self-contempt is really just based on this unrealistic, idealized view of yourself. So if you are one of those people who might have failed your first test, let's say, don't fall into that trap of self-contempt, because it's really just based on that illusory, idealized view of yourself. Self-frustration. You become frustrated when you're not reaching your goal, and all those obstacles in your way. You just become very upset and frustrated. You torment yourself. Sometimes you punish yourself because you're not meeting up your expectations. Okay, you're tearing yourself apart over it, and you might engage in self-destructive actions. You might drink. You might take drugs. You might do things that are going to, because you're feeling ashamed or whatever of not reaching your idealized sense of self. Okay. Finally, one of the things so anyway, I think you got a good idea of Horney's theory about neurotics, and how how that is reflected in our behavior in many different ways. One of the things that she is greatly credited for is a sense of feminist psychology. So she kind of was a leader among the feminist movement, probably to some degree, when it comes to in psychology, for sure. So she had a lot to say to women that people like Freud and Jung really were not saying very well. She really, like, for example, when you think about Freud and his beliefs about males and females, quite different from the way Horney saw it. It's the differences between men and women are due to your culture and your social expectations. Women are in a less powerful position. Men have all of the power. Men have all of the money. And women have their social roles, their social expectations are much lower. And that is the problem that women are having. That's what is making women weaker. It's not about biology. It is about the culture that creates these roles for males and females. And also, don't forget, when Karen Horney was growing up, so again, this is early 1900s, which is when she was prominent. So certainly during this time, the roles for males and females were more clear cut than they are today. More traditional, I should say, back then. Certainly she disagreed with Freud regarding the Oedipus complex. It was not about sexual attraction or hostility toward a parent. It's a result of learning and not biology. She did not believe in the concept of penis envy. If anything, maybe men have a womb envy. Maybe it's men who are desiring the ability to carry and produce children, and they have womb envy. That it was Freud who argued that women have penis envy, but Horney would say that it's really not about the penis per se. It's about this power and advantages that men have in society that women lack. And I think that as time goes on, those gaps are being reduced. They're certainly not being eliminated, but they are being reduced.